This review is for the Kinesis mWave ergonomic keyboard. For full transparency, this keyboard was sent over for Kinesis for a review and patient trial runs who require an ergonomic keyboard. That being said, all opinions stated in this review are my own, and Kinesis has no say in how I make this video or my points therein. For reference, I typed this entire script on the keyboard itself. I wanted to make sure if I'm reviewing a piece of hardware, I give it several days of testing before I make my final review. So basically, I set up for one day of getting kind of used to the keyboard and then used it for 3 straight days of both just general use and gaming. Ironically, the review was delayed for a bit as we had a patient who needed to trial the keyboard before I could get this video recorded. For those of you who just want the quick and dirty answer on this keyboard, should you buy it, that will really depend upon your needs. I found the keyboard to be a very, very good ergonomic mechanical keyboard that provided both benefits that maybe other ergonomic keyboards do not. If I had my choice right now, would I buy this if I needed it? The answer would probably be yes. So let's start with the actual initial presentation and taking it out of the box. The cardboard the keyboard shipped in is completely recyclable, and there's limited amounts of plastic included with it, which is very climate friendly. It also appears that all plastic, the protective bag the keyboard comes in, the bags containing the feet are recyclable as well. Opening the box, you're greeted with the keyboard protected in a plastic bag and some very specific instructions and notes on how to take it out. One piece of feedback I would give Kinesis is to maybe include a QR code in there where people can kind of click on it and go and watch a setup video from your support page. That might make it easier for some people to set it up. Remove the keyboard from the box required a little finagling, but honestly it's much simpler than other keyboards out there and takes very little time to get set up and running. Included with the keyboard is an integrated, non-removable wrist rest. It appears to be made of a fairly leatherette surface with moderate cushioning. The manual does state that the wrist rest can easily be cleaned by simply wiping it out with a microfiber cloth. Also included with the keyboard are 2 AA alkaline batteries from GP, which appears to be a brand from Europe. It also includes 3 feet, 2 that are about 20 millimeters in height, 1 that is about 25 millimeters in height. With most keyboards, you would think that would be to tilt the keyboard up and raise the front of the keyboard. But with the mWave keyboard, these are designed to create a negative camber to the keyboard to improve the typing posture. The 2 smaller feet sit at the outside, the taller one in the middle. Of interesting note here, it seems that the 2 smaller feet, or at least one of the smaller feet, has a north-south magnet orientation, while the other has a south-north magnet orientation, and the larger has a south-north magnet orientation. Why I mention this is just simply fun with magnets. The larger foot attracts only one of the smaller feet, repels the other foot. This does not affect performance in the least, and all magnets attach very securely. But from a purely nerd perspective, it was interesting to see them repel and attract each other. I had not used the keyboard in this angle before in that negative camber position, and I'll talk more about the learning curve, but after using this way, I can see how this would definitely help the right client in relieving some wrist pain. It also includes a 2-meter USB-A to USB-C cable. It doesn't state what type of cable this is, but I believe it's a 2.0 USB cable with 5-volt 2-amp standard, which does data transfer with the keyboard itself and will provide the ability to use the lighting effects on the keyboard. There's also instructions manual, and that's about it. The only negative and issue I take with this keyboard is that there is no 2.4 gigahertz option with this keyboard. It is either Bluetooth or wired. So that would be the one thing I would say that would be a negative if you're looking to use this more in the 2.4 gigahertz method and reduce latency. So doing cursory evaluation keyboard without using it, the entire body is composed of a plastic and it appears to be like any other office keyboard out there that you would normally get with a computer, except in the layout. It has a split keyboard layout with rising and sloping hump in the middle to improve ergonomics. Several of the keys are different sizes, and that's to help you identify where those keyboards are and telling them apart. It'd probably be classified as a 65% keyboard as it does not have a number pad, but it does feature full function row keys along with normal navigation keys in a non-traditional layout. The wired and wireless switch is front and center in the middle of the keyboard and allows for rapid switching. So right there's the switch. It also allows for either a single wired connection or dual Bluetooth connection. We'll talk about that later. The USB-C port is equally in the center top of the keyboard as well, which makes it nice for when you're connecting it. It's not off to the side or to the middle or to the other side. It's right in the middle where the cable should connect. The bottom has 5 rubber feet, which definitely prevents sliding on the desk. The weight of the keyboard itself is about 830 grams, and the keyboard plus cable plus all negative camber feet comes to 905 grams. The plastic the keyboard's comprised of does not feel cheap, almost, so it varies from like a stock Dell keyboard or HP keyboard, but it does sit somewhere safely between that of a lesser keyboard and more custom expensive keyboard. The keycaps themselves appear to be a lower profile Cherry MX style keycap that are single shot PBT or ABX. It doesn't state. It's hard to tell initially what they are, but they definitely are not double shot PBS or PBTs. Several of the navigation keys have a slight change of slope to them, which allows for easier location without having to constantly look down at your keyboard, such as the arrow keys. The switches that are on it also appear to be a standard Cherry MX low profile switch in the brown style, which is probably one of the more common out there. I did probe and prod around a bit, but it does not appear that the switches are hot swappable. It does appear they are soldered to the board, so there's no swapping of switches here. Setting the keyboard up is pretty simple. You can either run a wired cable directly to your computer or use it via Bluetooth. Again, the nice part about the Bluetooth is that it does have hot swappable between two different devices. The switch in the center controls a setting, with the bottom switch being wired and indicated by a green light when the cable is connected, then with the Bluetooth option in the middle being a white light and the Bluetooth at the top option being a blue light, helping you easily identify which of your devices you actually have it connected to. The keyboard does offer 3 lighting levels, but only if the wired connection is connected, or if you have the keyboard connected to an external power source via that wired connection. If you're just straight on Bluetooth, there is no illumination for the keyboard. Onto the Bluetooth connections about your keyboard. It does appear there's anywhere between 5 and 85 milliseconds of latency with a 200 Hz polling rate. Testing keys over a 200 word document showed a full 200 Hz polling rate the entire time, with an average latency of about 17.2 milliseconds. I tested this across both Bluetooth connections, and on secondary Bluetooth connection hit the same polling rate of 200 Hz with a latency of about 18.1 milliseconds. I tested this on wired and got the same 200 Hz polling rate, but a slightly better average latency of 11 milliseconds. Now, to put that in comparison, my other keyboard that I mainly use is a Razer Huntsman Analog, which has a polling rate of 1000 Hz and a sub 5 millisecond latency on that same 200 word test. In comparing this to my other 60% keyboard, a KLM Shift keyboard with Holy Panda switches, I was getting about 250 Hz polling rate with that and a 9.2 millisecond latency. Finally, testing this against a standard Dell keyboard, membrane one which comes with all keyboards, it has 125 Hz polling rate, an average latency, I didn't realize this, of almost 52 to 75 milliseconds. Now, for everyday typing, will you notice these milliseconds? Probably not. The entire time I was using the keyboard for typing out the script and watching YouTube videos, honestly, I couldn't tell the difference between this and my other keyboards. Typing with this when using a script or something like that, anything in general, I was not hitting any odds keys. I was hitting my stride after using it for about a day and easily matched my speeds with other keyboards, and I was easily back up to over 80 words per minute typing these things out. Gaming now, on the other hand, I should say, if you're very sensitive to latency, you might notice the latency on this keyboard. I tested this keyboard in 2 games, Call of Duty and Clair Obscur Expedition 33. I definitely could feel a bit of heaviness, is the way I would describe it, using this keyboard in Call of Duty. Now, obviously, I'm not an esports competitor, and the keyboard did not make me any better or any worse at the keyboard than I already was, but it just definitely felt a little bit more sluggish than my Razer Huntsman. In Clair Obscur, I definitely noticed I was not hitting my parries as often or as accurately. Now, was it a huge difference? No, it didn't make me miss every parry, but it definitely was a bit more challenging during gameplay. The other thing I noticed was I was having several hotkeys set up for both games. Then now I had to think about where my hotkeys were on the keyboard because I used some of my numpad for those hotkeys. But again, that was just muscle memory and I got used to it after enough time. Now let's talk about the keyboard software. The software they use is called Click Programming, which should help you set up macros, etc. The good news is this is a web-based, much like the VIA software. The bad news is in order to use this software, you have to be connected via a wired connection to get this to work, so Bluetooth is out. Now you can set this up via that wired connection, then go back to Bluetooth, but just to be aware, I first did try using this because I wanted to try Bluetooth, and on Mac OS, Windows OS, Linux Arch, the web-based software just would not connect to the keyboard. Okay, let's connect it to the wired section. Mac OS, it just bugged out and would not connect to the keyboard. Linux, it would not connect to the software, But Windows, boom, connected instantly. I was able to get into the software and adjust the keyboard. I was curious, so I fired up some Windows virtual machines on Linux, see if I could connect that way, and still no pass-through. So it seems to be a restriction of Linux itself. So if you want to modify anything on software, you're going to need to be on a wired connection and on the Windows device. All this did make me wonder, though, would VIA software be useful on this keyboard? So tested that via wireless, Bluetooth, and wired. No, the VIA software was not able to be connected to this. Also, in case you're curious, if you connect the keyboard via wired to an iOS device or an Android device and go into the software, it did not work as well. But on a positive, you were able to use this wire to those devices, which is something I didn't honestly expect. So let's start wrapping this up here. Initially, I was really hesitant to say that I liked this keyboard, mainly because of its unique keyboard shape, also along with the keys being a little non-standard. My initial typing and error rates were high, and I averaged only about 65 words per minute on a bad day, and I was losing way too much typing to correct errors. But like any other activity, it just takes the muscle memory to kick in to see how well you'll adjust to something. So I broke out some typing games on Steam, went through them on the keyboard, typed out this script, kept working on it, and then I also adjusted to the negative camber. The negative camber of this keyboard felt, well, strange at first. But even as I got used to it, forced me not to rest my poor carpal tunnels on the wrist rests as I was using them and crush them like I normally would do. I can definitely see the appeal to this and can see how for the right client, this would be a huge lifesaver for them. The sound of the keyboard is distinctly mechanical, but not clacky enough to annoy your neighbors or your spouse. That is the one area, honestly, I can say I was not satisfied with as a much more of an analog switch or Hall effect keyboard type person. I don't think this would cause me to switch away from my existing keyboard. Also, the general sound of the keyboard is missing some of that thok and creaminess of other mechanical keyboards. But again, this is a toss-up. This is not a high-end, expensive mechanical keyboard. This is a keyboard designed for patients who need ergonomic keyboards. The good news is, this isn't going to annoy anyone, right? So all in all, as I tested this might be rectified by either doing foam layer dampening or something like a tape mod in this keyboard to make it a little different. As I want this to be tested with my clients, I didn't want to tear this keyboard apart and try messing it up by doing these tape mods, so I kept it in stock. Where does this keyboard fall on my non-existent wall of keyboard fame, if you might ask? I would say for the right client, this keyboard will be a game changer. I can see definitely how the negative camber of this keyboard will help relieve carpal tunnel pressure for patients. Cannot wait to be able to recommend this keyboard to some others and to have some people test it as they need it. The price point of this keyboard is a bit high, so I'm warning you on that. We're in the $200 price range where this keyboard falls. There are definitely higher priced, higher end mechanical keyboards that fall in that price range that for design-wise, feel-wise, everything would definitely provide more options, but there aren't options in the ergonomic style mechanical keyboard for this. So this is kind of in a unique kind of silo on its own. What I will say is I was very happy using this keyboard. It took a little getting used to, putting the negative camber on took a little getting used to, but I could see how for that right patient, this could be such a huge keyboard that helps them relieve that repetitive strain they get from typing all day. All in all, Kinesis did a nice keyboard here. It is a solid, middle of the road kind of mechanical keyboard that excels in being ergonomic. That's the one thing this one does that other mechanical keyboards do not. I really wish it did have a 2.4 gigahertz option. I also wish the switches were hot swappable. Those are the two main takeaways I got from this keyboard that I was not exactly happy with. Also, with some of the keys being odd shaped, it would make it difficult to swap out and customize this keyboard. But I doubt that people that are buying this keyboard for ergonomics are buying this to swap it and make it customized on their own. That's typically more on the mechanical keyboard side and those that really kind of get into that. So all in all, I can say, this is a great keyboard. I'll include some links in the bottom of this video to the keyboard itself. They are non-affiliate links. I do not get any kickback from Kinesis for providing those links. If you feel that you need a mechanical keyboard, and if you do suffer from repetitive strain, what I would say, honestly, first of all, please see a certified hand therapist. Go and see them. They can make your life so much nicer and talk to you about things that may not be thinking about, changing the way your desk is set up and changing your keyboard. But if you don't want to do that and you just want an ergonomic keyboard, I would say this is a really good keyboard for you. Thanks for coming along on this little keyboard ride with me, and I hope you have a great day.